This video explores version control. After watching this video, you should be able to understand and explain the major concepts underlying content management. Version control is a backbone of professional software development. It's what pretentious instructors like me like to call a core development competency. And what I mean by that is this. When you get your job as a software developer, you'll be using version control every single day. It's a huge part of your role at work, and it's what you get paid for. So you need to know what it is and why you use it. A lot of time people are thrown into using version control, whether at work or in a training course like this, without a lot of background or core knowledge. But fortunately, version control, which is also called source control management, it's really easy to understand because it really only does 3 things. And those things are fundamental. So take a deep breath and get ready to dive into these 3 concepts of what version control is and what version control does for you. There are 3 things version control does. First, it gives you a safety net, and that lets you restore your work to a previously saved state. Version control lets you roll back time when you mess things up. And if you've ever written a term paper and you've made changes to it that you later regret, you may understand why you'd want to return to a previous version. Version control can do that for you. Here's number 2. When you use version control, you can collaborate so you can coordinate changes within a large group. Like when you've worked on a group project and you've asked for feedback, you probably get this one too because version control lets you handle uncoordinated changes from lots of people in a single project so you can bring those changes together and create a polished final result. Thing 3. Version control lets you try out different approaches and work on them before you add them to your project. So you can see how they work out and you can see what they look like before you commit to it or even put a ring on it. Version control is the ultimate try before you buy tool in software development. Okay, these are the 3 things that version control does. Now what I want to do is dive in a little deeper and look at each of these one at a time. Version control's safety net feature ensures you don't have to live with decisions you regret, because software development is not like getting a haircut. When you get a bad haircut, the only way to deal with it is, well, cut off more hair or try maybe parting it on the other side or something like that. But software does not naturally grow back over time. So you can't get out of your mess that way. You need a better way to fix things when your code goes south. What version control does is it lets you save your work over time. It keeps a record of your changes so you can see those changes, and if you have to revert them, you can do that. This lets you effectively travel back in time and, for example, undo that horrible decision where you accidentally kept your dad from dating your mom, and then you started dissolving because you and your siblings were never born. But it's easiest to see this by looking at a real-world example. Probably the simplest version control system in the entire world is located at gist.github.com. This is a site that lets you paste text and share it with other people. But it also offers a full-featured version control system. And I want to show you how creating and editing a gist shows the safety net behind version control. This is what the gist site looks like. It's really pretty simple. There's a button in the top right corner that lets you create new gists. There's a place to add a title for each project, and for each file you add, There's a field for the file name, followed by a text editor. I am going to make a shopping list. First, I add my title, which is My Amazing Shopping List, because humility has no place in version control. Next, I'll add a file name, which in this case is shoppinglist.txt. And then I'll add some things to shop for, some bread, some eggs, a gallon of ice cream, and some bananas. I click Create Public Gist, and I have saved my new file. There's a special word for saving that file when working in version control, and that word is commit. It's a magic word, but it's one you'll hear a lot. I just made my first commit to this file. You can tell this because my revision count is now at 1. 1 commit means 1 revision. Okay, it's time to make some changes. I go ahead and click Edit because I want to add to my shopping list. Editing allows me to add more text or change the text that's already in my file. This is me, and I'm editing my shopping list. I've added lettuce and potato chips. And now I click Update Public Gist to save my changes. My revision count, which is also my commit count, is now at 2 because I've updated and saved the file. Now I'm going to go and make one more revision, so I click Edit one more time. I'm trying to eat a little healthier, so I'm going to delete lines 3 and 6, removing ice cream and potato chips from my shopping list. When I've done so, I click Update Public Gist again, and this commits my changes. And here's my final list. It includes just bread, eggs, bananas, and lettuce. And my revision count is now at 3. It's time now to look at those revisions and see what's been happening in version control. So here we are under the hood. This is what the version control information looks like for my shopping list. It goes backwards in time, so my earliest version, which is called my first commit, or sometimes my initial commit, it's the last thing listed on this page. Newer changes appear first, and I hope you're not colorblind, because when you're working on GitHub, green on the right means things that you add, and red on the left means things you delete. In this first commit, I added 4 items to the first version of my shopping list. In my next commit, I not only added 2 more items, but I also put a line break after bananas. So there are 4 changes here. There are the 2 new items, lettuce and potato chips, and an edit to line 4, where I replace the version of bananas without a line break with one that has a line break. And that's why you see the red deletion on the left and the green addition on the right. Finally, in my third revision, I got all healthy and stuff, and I deleted ice cream and potato chips. The red color on original lines 3 and 6 show that these lines are almost entirely, or actually are entirely removed, and if you look at the right side, you see that bananas that had been on line 4 is now on line 3. But Git is wonderful, and it lines these up. So even though bananas is on a new line, in terms of the line count, it's actually lined up in the display. That's so helpful. My updated list only has 4 lines, and you notice that each line is numbered. So here's the first major win of version control. Version control lets you review all the changes you've made over time. You can see each change, and you can understand the process that got you to where you are, change by change by change. Version control also lets you safely travel in time. By clicking the View button for my second commit, I can undo my healthy choices and return to the version of my shopping list that included both ice cream and potato chips. Here's that second version, and is complete with all 6 items. I could roll back time because version control let me revisit earlier versions of my work. At this point, there are still 3 revisions, but I can choose to look at any revision, so there's no edit or change that I can't recover and come back from. Being able to keep and choose which version to work with is a fundamental concept of version control, and it's what makes version control so safe. So, does GitHub save every single version of my shopping list? Are there 3 entirely separate files stored on the site? No, there are not, because version control doesn't store complete files or projects. What it saves are changes. Now, when you cut out everything that's not red or green, you get a better sense of exactly what each version control commit does. My first commit at the bottom added 4 new lines. The second deleted 1 and added 3. And finally, my last commit deleted 2 lines. Using version control is super space efficient because it only saves changes, not entire files. And anytime you have regrets, anytime you made a bad choice or you messed up your work, you can revert to an earlier version. It will be okay. Being able to roll back time establishes a core version safety control net. I'm not sure I said that correctly. A core version control safety net. With version control, you never have to live with bad choices. And that's the first thing that version control does for you. The second major feature of version control is that it lets you collaborate with many people all at once. Version control lets you handle changes from many people within a single project. If you've worked on any group project, you're probably familiar with this situation. Imagine, if you will, that I made my shopping list and I emailed it out to my coworkers. Hey folk, I said, do you have any suggestions for my shopping list? And then I'd wait and let all the suggestions roll in, because there is nothing people like more than making changes to other people's work. So here we are. Each of my coworkers has a suggestion, and none of those suggestions are coordinated with each other. They're just feedback on what each person thinks of my list. 3 of them want me to add items, and another wants me to remove an item. 2 of them have even suggested the same change, although they use different wording. I'm going to adjust the color on each of these requests so you get a sense of how this works in version control. Each suggestion is a version change. My inbox now contains 3 add requests and 1 deletion request. Each one is a potential commit. One difference between this example and my original shopping list on GitHub is that there's no timeline of these changes. One coworker might have emailed me in the morning, another in the afternoon, and everyone is working on the same shopping list, but doing it on their own schedule. Our work is completely distributed between all the members of my team. Another difference between this example and the previous one is that more than one person may make the same change, but do it in a slightly different way. And this is similar to what you might have when doing software development. 2 people might implement the same function or method, but use a different approach, use different code. If you look at the 2 changes at the bottom, both want chips, but each one has said it in a slightly different way. Okay, it's time for a little bit more jargon. In version control, each change is called a pull request, and this is how you submit a change to a coordinated development project. Each of my coworkers is attempting to contribute to my project, which is my shopping list, and their pull requests tell me the kinds of changes they want to make, and I can pull those changes in, and I can update the project with their recommendation. Now, in the real world, it's unlikely that each change will be limited to a single item on a single shopping list, But this is not a bad example because each change, or what we call in version control, each commit should be small and focused. So it's actually pretty realistic to represent each of these pull requests this way. So let's score 1 for good metaphors. In this project, I am the project manager. The official version control term for that is that I am the owner or maintainer. I maintain the shopping list. I choose what changes and what pull requests to accept or deny. If I choose to accept, for example, the no ice cream suggestion, I merge that suggestion into my list as a commit. So I'm going to do that, and here's how I do this. First, I approve the pull request. And in doing so, I add that commit, which is that change that deletes ice cream from my list. This revision, this commit, consists of delete the ice cream line. Next, I'm going to add potato chips, so I need to choose one from the bottom. I think I'm going to go with the guy from the left because I think his implementation is a little bit more elegant. Okay, back to version control jargon. I, the maintainer, have chosen to merge the potato chips pull request, and my list now adds potato chips to a proud and enduring shopping expedition. Coordinating changes by choosing which requests to merge and which requests to close without merging lets version control handle distributed development from large groups of programmers. It's an amazing feature that makes it possible to bring talent together to create large-scale projects. It's also what allows anyone to contribute to open source projects. The project maintainer chooses which contributors or which contributions to add, and this lets the project grow over time, potentially with many, many contributors. So, you've seen how version control adds a safety net, and you've seen how it lets you work with many people. The last big great feature of version control is that it lets you explore and try things out without messing up the project for anyone else. When you're building an important project, you don't want to start exploring, experimenting, and changing things in your main code base. Because if you do, you have the unique and special opportunity of completely and utterly messing things up for your coworkers. It's a fact that exploring new features or testing out ideas and then committing them to your project is a bad idea because it is thoroughly unsafe. It may break your build so your project can no longer be compiled. It's almost guaranteed to anger your coworkers because you went in there and you changed important things in an irresponsible way. And of course, there are consequences like bad performance reviews and, maybe personal retribution. I'm going to stop there, but I think we can all agree that this is a bad idea. But at the same time, you need to be able to share your ideas. Building software isn't about living in an echo chamber where it's just you sitting there and driving all the development. You need to be able to get feedback from others about your new features. Other people need to check your features out, kick the wheels, see if your feature does what it should do. You want other people to give you design critiques and make suggestions on how you can better implement and architect your changes. And these are all reasons you need to be able to push your changes out from your personal computer to a shared project. Once again, this is where the last feature of version control comes to the rescue. And this feature is called branching. And what branching does is that it lets you create safe, alternate versions of your project that will not mess up your main build. It will not get your coworkers angry, and it will not kill your performance reviews. When you branch a project, it works just like the rest of version control, but it creates a separate and safe environment where you can design new features and test out your ideas. It works like this. Say you have a version-controlled shopping list project, but now you want to try out a new version, one that focuses on healthier food. Version control lets you branch your project so your changes will not affect your main work. In this example, the new branch is used for the healthy shopping list. You can create as many branches as you want. You can even branch from branches to turn your healthy shopping list into a healthy vegan shopping list by removing the eggs. None of these branches affect your main project, and you can continue to update and make changes to your main project without affecting the branches. Everything is still stored using the ultra-efficient version control system that saves your changes instead of saving however many copies of your file. And every branch has its own change history that begins from the point where it was branched. So you still get all the same safety features, you still get the same distributed workflow in branches that you do when working on your main project. Branching gives you the third and most important feature of version control because it lets you try out features without ticking off your coworkers or your project manager, but it lets you create and test those changes with the same members of your group in a safe and controlled way. And when you're done developing those changes, you submit a pull request, and hopefully they get approved and merged back into the main development of your project. Branching is what lets you to continue to build new features and fix old features while keeping your project stable and running. So there you have it. These are the 3 things that version control does for you. When you use version control, you add a safety net that lets you back away from mistakes. You create a platform that lets you work in a group and make changes that are thoughtful and coordinated. And finally, version control lets you establish branches so you can develop new features without putting your main project in danger. Safety, collaboration, and trying new things. These are the key features of version control. Now it's your turn. Review some of the concepts from this video by visiting gist.github.com. You will need a GitHub account. As you explore, make sure you add as well as delete lines. Click Revisions and explore the way version control stores your changes as red deletions and green additions.